Thank you for joining us today for episode 170 of Think Big with Michael Zellner podcast, sponsored by Sleepyz's Masonry. My guest today joining me on the show for the third time is the wonderful Thaao Penghlis, who is here today to talk about his book, Seducing Celebrities One Meal at a Time. Thaao is not only a very famous soap opera actor and television actor, but he's also an author and a writer. He's been on several television shows throughout his career. His big break came in 1981 when he appeared on the very famous soap opera General Hospital during the Luke and Laura era, playing the villain Victor Cassadine. He also starred on Santa Barbara and on the network television show Mission Impossible. He's best known for playing the dual character role twins of Andre and Tony DiMera. And in 2023, he released his 4-part podcast series called The Lost Treasures, which is wonderful to listen to. And I learned so much about things that I never would have known in my entire life had I not listened to that podcast. For a little history for those that don't know, the show Days of Our Lives exists in the fictional city of Salem. He premiered on the show on November 6, 1981, and was on and off the show for 5 decades through June of 2023. It's beyond amazing to be a character on a television show for that long of a period of time. He has won several awards in his career, including twice for Outstanding Lead Actor in a Drama Series, with his last award being in 2020. I'm really excited to have him back on today to talk about his very entertaining memoir cookbook, and this is it right here. It is called Seducing Celebrities One Meal at a Time. And Thaao, I really appreciate you coming back on today. I'm excited to talk to you.
Oh, thank you. That's kind of, you hear one's history. You did that very well.
Oh.
I kind of think how long I've been around now. And it comes so quickly.
I know.
When you think you've been doing the show for that many years. Now that I'm at this stage in my life, even though I was told the best is yet to come, so I'm moving towards that. So we'll see what it's going to be. I have a few irons in the fire, but it depends on what's going to bite and what's going to put me in a different field of work. And so, I haven't been sitting around since I've not been on Days for a while. Sadly, really, in many ways, because I enjoyed, Days, it becomes like your family. So it's always nice to go into your makeup room and say hello to the girls and to Armando, our hairdresser, and to Richard with wardrobe and the other actors, and the producers. And of course, the crew, when you go on, it's kind of nice when you haven't been on for a while and they come and applaud you. And they've been a wonderful barometer for what the work, and of course there's Leanne and there's Lauren, who've played my wives on the show. So there's a lot of history there, but there's a book that we're going to discuss. I had my first book signing with it a few weeks ago at Barnes & Noble, and we had
Awesome.
standing room only. It was a lot of fun, actually, because there were a lot of questions after telling certain stories. And it's kind of a different cookbook because every recipe has a personality with it.
Right.
That's what makes it kind of different. So the idea came when my manager at the time said, "Why don't you write a cookbook?" And I cook most of the time out of my head, excuse me. But then I realized I had a lot of stories of great people I'd crossed my path, and even Omar Sharif. And I was going to go to Paris and stay with him. We became very good friends out of doing Memories of Midnight. And I saw recently where he was buried in Cairo, southern part of Cairo, and how he's buried. And I was thinking, because I'm going to go back to Egypt next year, so I think I will seek my way to find him, because in many ways, I don't know, it got emotional for me when he died. And even now, when I think about him, I suppose, when you meet somebody who's somebody you looked up to and you are actually working with them and you get along, which is not always the case.
Sure.
And even, last night I was watching a series called Condor, which I'm really enjoying, even though it started in 2018. And there's Bill Hurt. And, when we did Altered States together and we were friends for a while there, and I think he's gone too. You start looking at your life and you're thinking, oh my God, all these people are gone. But they left a memory that has been etched into my mind and my spirit about how few of those experiences are, especially the ones that resonate.
Absolutely.
So it was, so the book is full of wonderful stories, good recipes, I think. I had some wonderful questions that were asked at the book signing. And someone said to me, if you could call back any one of your friends to join you at your table for dinner for an evening, who would they be? And it was none of the great celebrities or anything that I worked with. It was just my great friends who came before me.
Right.
My friend Joe DeWinter and Doris Roberts and Milton Katselis, and I think of the people that made a difference. And so writing brings up memories.
Absolutely.
Sometimes people leave the planet and didn't tell their family their story or what they experienced or their private thoughts. So I think it's so important. And that's why the book, to me, when my niece was here, she wanted one of my books, and I signed it because in years to come, when she's telling her children who their uncle was or what he did or how different he was to the rest of the family, they have someone to look up to. Right. Whereas we didn't, as kids, there was no one around me growing up in Australia who I could find as a mentor. So I came to America and found that. I'm so glad I did, even though I'll probably end up retiring in Australia. But, America has been a wonderful gift.
Absolutely. When you talked about your manager, I believe you're talking about a lunch that you had in Santa Monica at Shutters with Alan Morrell, who you said, quote, planted the seed for this book, unquote. And then you visited Cuba, and that gave you the idea for the book. What was it in Cuba that helped, make this happen?
Well, I have a great friend there, Rafaela. She's a very voluptuous woman. And she's always calling me her amor, her amor. She's got a great sense of humor as well. And I remember one night while I was there, I asked her to come for dinner. And so we went to La Guarita, which means the cockroach, I think. So went to this restaurant that is part of a ballet studio upstairs. And you reach the top, and inside it is so eclectic. There's not one chair that matches another. It looks like they went out for a couple of days and took all the furniture that was being thrown out and made a restaurant from it. Right. That's what it reminds me of. Some interesting paintings, but my God, the cuisine is fantastic. And I remember walking along the hallway, and I was looking at the photographs of the people who had been there before. And there were all these celebrities all joined together in one frame, all little clippings of them. And I just kind of looked, Beyonce, a lot of musicians, because, people love Cuba because of its music.
Right.
Not its food. You can't say that Cuba is known for its food, but its music, its passion, its love for life, great artists, great painters. And there I looked at it and I thought, they all looked very happy. And I saw what they had ordered, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. they must have been seduced. I remember saying to myself, they must have been seduced by the cuisine and the atmosphere. Well, the contrast of the furniture and the contrast of the way the food is served is extraordinary. Simple, but classic. And it's almost as if they went to France, a little bit of Italy, a little bit of Greece, and that became the cuisine. And you know that the person in the kitchen knows what she or he is doing. I remember going in. It was a he, actually. I remember I could go into the kitchen to talk to them. And that was the idea. It came from that. And I thought, oh, these celebrities were seduced. So when my manager says to me, Alan, well, I shouldn't even mention his name. He turned out to be such a dick. I thought to myself, he says, well, what are you going to call it? And I said, well, I don't know, food seductive. You know, when I have friends come over, part of it, what you give is giving yourself, part of yourself to somebody or some people. And hopefully it all works. It has always worked. Because when I do it, I don't do it halfway. It's like when I was doing Days of Our Lives or Mission, whatever, I'd kick myself. I'd be down on myself if I wasn't presenting the best of myself. I was hard. Well, it's not that I was hard on myself. I was taught that way.
Right.
I was taught about discipline. I was taught about respect. I was taught so many qualities of what was good. And some people may not like me for saying this, but that's why I love Biden. Because when I listened to Biden's speech the other day, I thought, what a classic gentleman. Old school, that was part of, I mean, he brought tears to my eyes because, you know, people are so cynical and how they dismiss him. And I think to myself, yeah, they don't know his accomplishments, you know. And so when he sat there and talked, and I said to myself, you know, I did entertain Jacqueline Kennedy. So I did get close to the White House and how she was, how dignified. And we've been losing that along the way. It's almost as if since certain others have come in and what they talk about. I mean, when you think of Taylor Greene and a few of the others and how they talk, and I'm going, they sound like they're talking from the gutter.
Right.
So for me, the people I chose who crossed my path and I decided to stay with always went for quality. They wanted things to be done well. And so therefore, that influence on me was pushed into my work as an actor because every day was a challenge. And when I got through it, it was an accomplishment because, let's face it, doing daytime is not an easy gig.
Right.
And, you know, you have to give it to those actors and those writers and directors and the team that bring a show together. It makes such a difference. And so in paralleling all those qualities of people that did things well, I wanted to do a cookbook and do it well. And so thank God I had a friend who I used to cook for every Saturday. And she said to me, you know, I used to follow you around. I wrote the recipes because I was watching what was going into your head, but you never would speak about it. So I would write things down. So she had like 20 recipes.
Huh.
So that added. And then I called my sisters who are very good at desserts. And I said to them, oh, how did you make that? Or how did Mum make that? And so I went into the family vault and I brought some of those recipes out of into the journal. And I remember the publisher said to me, well, do these recipes work? I went, suddenly it put me in a spot and I went, oh, I don't know. Yeah, it worked for me, but right. You know, someone may like a little more salt, a little more pepper, a little more spice.
Right.
But, you know, recipes are a guiding line as to what you put together and what comes together and the finished product, because it's gone through different hands, will result in something different. I mean, my soups have been a lifesaver for me. And I love making soups. And I love cooking fish and pastas and, lamb. I love doing rack of lamb or leg of lamb. I love doing I love Thanksgiving. I mean, I'll tell you a quick story. I've never seen a turkey in my life except in the Doris Day movie when I was a kid in Australia, where you saw Thanksgiving. And I thought, oh, my God, because we didn't have it in Australia. And I thought to myself, oh, isn't that interesting? A big turkey and all the accoutrements that go along with it, the stuffing and the cranberry. And so what you do is, when I started, I went to a wonderful party where there were a lot of MGM people. Someone said, come along, there's going to be some interesting people. Well, Vincent Minnelli was there. And Vincent Minnelli, who was Liza Minnelli's father and Judy Garland's husband, also did some of the most magnificent musicals in MGM history. He was there. And he looked at me and he says, would you come and help me? And I said, oh, okay. And I never knew about a turkey. So I said, you look like you know how to cut a turkey. I thought, oh my God. And I'm in front of Jean-Louis, who did all the wardrobe for all the great female stars. And I thought, okay. So I looked at its shape. So I thought the first thing that goes is the drumsticks. And then, I learned long ago that you don't cut a turkey until it's come out of the oven for at least a half an hour. Otherwise, it crumbles. So I remembered that. So it wasn't that amount of time. And then I started slicing it perfectly. Miracle after miracle. I thought to myself, he says, I was right, that you knew how to cut a turkey. And it was one of those things that happened to you in life where intuition came to the forefront and you learn how to do it. So it's always got a special meaning for me. And it's even the way I make my cranberries, where I will put some gelatin in so it will set. And then I put it in a mold, but I butter the mold first. And then I put the cranberries in there. And I love putting cloves in there. I love the smell of spice. And so it just, when it's ready, I turn it over and it just slides out like a mold, a beautiful mold. And that to me was perfection. And so then I grated orange rind and then lemon rind over it, which gave a wonderful color of the yellow against the burgundy. And so, that's what I do. And then I created my own stuffing and people thought I was crazy, but I would bring coconut into it. Mm. I would make it tropical in a sense. I would bring coconut with bananas and some dried fruit and nuts. And I used oatmeal instead of breadcrumbs. And then I liked putting in the spices, and then the breadcrumbs and all the rest of it come together with orange juice and chicken broth. And the thing is, it's a wonderful stuffing. As I did at one time, a restaurateur was at my house. He said, could I have the recipe? And he said to me that the rice dish that I did and the stuffing were two things he put in his restaurant that always sold out.
Wow.
So it was, I do a rice dish that I love doing with coconut milk. Not coconut water, I should say, not coconut milk. There is a black rice that I get from Whole Foods, and that rice I cook it in there with raisins, and it's a wonderful, wonderful dish. And I'll put sunflower seeds in there as well, and then at the end, after I put the olive oil and mix it around, I put honey in it, and then I turn that over, so it becomes almost like an Arabic rice.
Right.
Anyway, you got my recipes for the day.
Oh my gosh, it sounds so good. When you go to a place like Whole Foods, do you get bombarded by fans?
No. We don't do that in LA.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? People look at you, or someone will, like when I went to Costco, people come up and occasionally they'll ask for a photograph,
Sure.
You get tired of having to look right. You just like to get out of bed, put on your overalls, and
right.
Go shopping, right? And then shower up later. But, there's always somebody who's going to recognize you and say, oh, excuse me, can we take a photo? And you're going, yeah, the head sticking up in the air, not so glamorous. But not so much. I mean, listen, I've had 2 or 3 people will come up to me and say, I love your work on the show.
Sure.
But we don't bombard here in Los Angeles. I've seen big stars. Nobody goes up to them.
Yeah. Years ago, it used to be obviously the autograph. Now it's everybody wants the picture to be able to put it on their social media page.
And the bad picture at that. I mean, have you seen some of those pictures you want to kill?
Yes, absolutely.
I've had to tell people, could you please take that photograph down? Why would you post that? Either your eyes are closed or they're half, it just looks not great. And people just click. It's people should understand composition. And I can't stand selfies.
Right.
I don't do selfies anymore. I just go, well, no, because your nose is like there.
Right.
I mean, someone says, oh, what do you care? And I said, what do you mean, what do I care? Do you think I spent all these years in this business? I mean, I remember Deidre Hall, Deidre Hall, she's always, with the light and the rest. She's very careful about those things. And there's a few others on the show, but they taught me, who wants to have things go out that don't look good?
Right. I was going to ask you, one of the things that you do in your book, besides talking about food and recipes, is, you recount early in life in Greece when you developed a passion for acting and performing. You share with the readers of the book, which I love the book, anecdotes about your family, your education, and your early experiences in theater. You chronicled your move to the United States and the rise to fame in Hollywood. And one thing that I really related to, that I'm sure many others will too, is that even though you had a ton of success as you navigated through the competitive world of entertainment, you also had struggles and things that weren't always easy for you. Can you tell us just a little bit about a few of those?
You mean things that make me human?
Yes, things that make you human.
Things that help you begin and realize there are obstacles that, like everybody else has, it depends on how you handle them.
Right.
One of the things I learned early on was not to be around losers. There were a lot of them around. People who complain a lot.
Right.
I think the big influence was with Milton. And, when you don't have much money and you live, from paycheck to paycheck, but the thing that nourishes you is the workshop you go to twice a week and working as an assistant to Milton Cassadine, the director. It kind of helped me understand better how to apply myself to things that were tough to overcome. It's not easy being poor.
Right.
It was not like I came from a wealthy family and asked my family if they would help me. So the choice was pretty basic, and that was, how do I earn a living? I mean, I had to study for 8 years before I got my papers to stay in America. I applied because of my knowledge in Chinese and English 18th century art, and worked with this connoisseur who sponsored me. And that started, but it was $75 a week as an apprentice. Wow. And that hardly took me anywhere. I mean, there were days where I had an apple or ravioli from a can. The thing that helped me a lot was that I thought to myself, I can't go back home and have any of those naysayers who said, why would you want to go to America and leave your family behind? I didn't want them saying, I told you, right. You'd fail, which is what they wanted, because they wanted to prove their point.
Yep.
So it took me a while to get my first job, but once I got in, once my accent and my look didn't seem so foreign. And then I must give to Gloria Monty from General Hospital. She saw something in me and the way I spoke as a great character, which became Victor Cassadine. I was the only one who survived that whole run. And then she was bringing me back under a nice contract for 3 years. And then she said to me, but I'll tell you, darling, get out of daytime. It's not good enough. So she saw something that I was training for, but not had achieved yet in my self-respect. She could see that she was a very smart, intuitive woman. That's why she was a great success. That's why she made Tony Geary such a star, because it's not like he was attractive, but he had a personality and a passion, and he was your alternate hero. And so there were times there where I was ready to give it up. I thought to myself, I think I'm going to move to England and study Shakespeare. And why Shakespeare? I don't know. I thought maybe it'd make me a more important actor. I didn't want to just be an actor. But a job came, and then another, and then another. And then because I was trained well, I mean, I went to school all those years without going out for an audition because I couldn't work as an actor. And suddenly one day, I remember Milton did a play. He went to New York. I remember we only lasted 6 weeks, and it left us all for dead, really. We were broke. We didn't know where we were going to go. And I thought, here we go. It's another loss, another losing streak. So what do I do? And then I remember one of my dearest friends died overnight. It was so tragic, their death. And I remember while I was in the garden in this penthouse that his estate, and I was feeling sorry for myself. I was feeling like lost. Where do I go? And then I get a call, and a casting director says, I can't reach your agent because it's Saturday. This is an urgent situation. They're doing Slow Dancing in the Big City. Someone had seen me in the play Jockeys I was doing, had done in New York, where I played a Balanchine choreographer, and wanted to see you immediately. And I said, well, she does, what are you wearing? I said, I'm just in my overalls, my nails and everything dirty. She said, come as you are. Do you know what it's like to go as an actor, where your whole life has been preparing you for a moment, and you're going in like you were a gardener, and your knees are dirty from the dirt and all that, and you arrive at the audition, and John Avildsen, he'd won the Oscar for Rocky the year before, so he was quite strong in his opinion, and he said to me, give me the scene. So I know there were about 20 actors there. So after a while, after I did the audition, he said, would you please wait? And which I said, okay. So it came down to 3 of us. So we all did the audition again. And then he says, can you start Monday? And I have to tell you, I went outside on Park Avenue and dropped to my knees, buckled. Not because out of appreciation, I just couldn't believe, out of all of that tragedy that we went through, the loss of the play, my best friend dying overnight, had a heart attack, and suddenly a piece of joy came. So when I called my agent, they thought it was ridiculous that I got the job without them. And I said, no, I'm starting Monday. So I worked on that movie for 8 weeks, and it was a lovely movie. And Bill Conti, who did Rocky's score, did our score.
Yep. Beautiful
Score. And then from there, I get memories. I got what was the third? I got, I'm trying to think of that film, just went blank on it. Anyway, and then Altered States came, and then a play at the Geffen. And before I knew it, Perseverance. Understanding. I mean, I meet Telly Savalas, who got me my first job. I had Under 5.
Oh, I loved him.
Kojak. He was such a great guy. And he came up, I did my audition, and he came up and kissed my hand and said, you're on. And I was working with some wonderful actors, Carrie Snodgrass and Victor Bruno. And then it all started. And so even though it took a few years, Perseverance won out, because I didn't just sit around. And what I used my time was studying, reading, trying to fill myself with an education I didn't have before. And that is, nobody was telling me what to study. I chose it. And so that's how it all, so those obstacles in those years were terrible. Not to say that others didn't come. I mean, when I lost Days of Our Lives in 1995, my parents had just died. And Days, because somebody had, I don't want to go into that story, but that was a terrible, I mean, once they died they said the two worst things in your life is to lose a child or a parent, right, or lose a job. And I got both of them in a matter of weeks. And all I remember was I was sitting up in my home up in Macapa along Mulholland. And all I could remember was, what did it all mean? Because I was doing a career with my parents in rescuing them and helping the eldest son go beyond them and have them looked upon and say, he did it on his own.
Right.
So when they went, I had no dream left. The dream died. So it took 3 years. I had to recreate the dream for myself. And that was not easy, right, which I then had to look at the fact, most of the time, do we do it for our own self-satisfaction, or are we doing it to prove to somebody else? Because in life, especially in America, where success is and money is what it's all about.
Yeah,
there's nothing like. That's why I think Trump hates being called a loser. We didn't all get $400 million to start life.
Right.
I came with $180, and so life, when you've got a beginning and you see the full arc of where you've come from, it's a joy, because it's about how did you come in and satisfy those things you're supposed to do in this lifetime.
Right.
And I think I did. I think I could have had more success, but I chose at times to take journeys instead. When other jobs were coming, doing The King and I, that they wanted me in Australia to go to all Her Majesty's theatres, and I kept saying no. And my agent saying, it's such a dated musical. Why would you want to go to Australia to do that musical? Well, that musical was such a success. It went to Broadway and won Best Revival. Do you know what I mean? You look back at the things you said no to.
Right.
Anyway, so
tell us. No, go ahead, finish up.
But out of this, the one pleasure I do have that I don't have to ask anything or anyone what it's like is cooking. That's one thing, one area of life to me that I've kind of conquered. I don't think there's anything I don't know how to cook. But that's been through years and years of experience, and going out to restaurants and having your own imagination. It's like reading a good book and an idea pops up for a story. It's the same thing with recipes. Even though restaurants won't give you the recipe, you can sort of feel what's in or taste what's in the cuisine.
Kojak reruns come on. I think it's Get TV, and just going back and watching those, and remember those, and him on the sucking on the big sucker, and Who Loves You Baby, and he was such a great actor that died too young. I believe he died in the mid-90s, if I remember correctly, of cancer.
I remember. I can't tell you how many times I had dinner with Telly. He always loved his pasta, but when he got prostate cancer at 72, he didn't want any treatment or anything. He decided it was time to go. And I don't know why he chose that. It could have been saved. I mean, look how many men have gone through prostate cancer.
Right.
And, but he was such the life, and he was generous, It was like Omar. They were very generous. I mean, Omar with his champagne and his stories and his caviar, and Telly, when I was lying on the ground after I'd been shot at 5 o'clock, not shot, I was hit by a car and thrown over the car and onto the ground. I had a stunt guy who did it, who broke his leg doing it. And I lay there on the wet ground, and Telly coming up to me and looked at me, and he goes, "Are you Greek?" I said, "Yes." He says, "Get up. You want a brandy? Come into my trailer. Let's go have a brandy." And that's how it all started.
That's awesome. One other thing that when you mentioned about getting that part and, going in, getting that call and you weren't dressed the way you wanted to, and you couldn't believe you got the part. And when you go outside and you buckle to your knees, and after losing your friend that way, I talk about a lot of times the power of a moment in your life, how one moment can change your entire life. And I mean, obviously that, not saying that you wouldn't have been successful, but that one thing there obviously started a chain reaction of a lot of other positive things for you.
Yes, we all have those moments, and it is correct. And what do we do with it? How does it affect us? Are we at cause or are we at effect? And I've always tried to teach myself when I'm feeling down and I'm around by myself, and I think, or feel like I was mistreated or not appreciated, especially with my intention, which was always for the best of what I was doing.
Right.
Not nice people. In this business, I have to say, there are a few that are great and good, but boy, there are a lot of bad ones in this industry. They are selfish, and they have no feelings about dismissals or the way they treat you. You're called up. We don't need you anymore. Goodbye. And after a while, after 7 times, I'm okay with that, because they have to write their stories. But it's in the way they do it. There's so many ways that you can be kind.
Absolutely.
Because when you're an artist, or when you're just a person who's putting out from their own spirit, and someone comes along and knocks you over without even apologizing, or when they say, "Oh, you're fired," and you're going, "What was I fired for? Not doing good work? I've been doing good work all my life. That's the way I live. I can't do things that are bad off. I mean, they're not maybe as good as some days. It varies. You can't always be at optimum, but it's in the way we treat each other. I mean, I don't like the politics now. I hate the way that they're going after Kamala and the way they talk about it. And I'm going, what is it with you men and women in this country? Why do you treat women the way you do?
Right.
That disrespect, like they're not good enough. I'm sorry, they are the heart of this country. Women. They work hard. I mean, what it's like to be a mother, what it's like to keep it all together. It just pisses me off when they talk about now they can't wait, and some of the stupid things they say. I mean, these men, sometimes you listen to them, you're going, where did they go to school? What were their experiences? Because it's about their own greed and their own success. They don't care what they say about anybody else as long as they win.
Right.
Well, that's not going to get you in as far as I'm concerned. I'm not saying that the door, if you're better, the doors of heaven are open to you. No, everybody's got their lessons to learn. But my God, I'd hate to be some of these guys who have to face themselves later.
If I didn't say thank you, if I didn't say yes, sir, yes, ma'am, when I was a child growing up, I got the look, from mom and dad. And then if, the second time, if I didn't do it when I got home, I got the belt or I got the switch. And so it was ingrained in me at a young age. And it's just automatic now. It's just like even when I go through a drive-through to pick up food, I look at the person, if they have a name tag on, and I use their name because, and you see a lot of times they smile because they're not used to that. Someone just treats them like, you're just a nobody, and it makes them feel good. And just said, it's just part of human decency.
Yeah. And, you reach a certain age and you look back and you see what's left behind. I just lost a dear friend called Jan Redman. That's been kind of hard. We spoke at least 3 times a week. She lived in Florida. And we spoke about life, we spoke about the show, we spoke about things that she loved, her family, and I would send her things I'd written. She was my barometer. And, she died suddenly a few weeks ago. And
I'm sorry.
God, I have to admit, it's tough when you're looking at people who are younger than you and you're going, wow. So, what is the end like? She couldn't take it anymore because she couldn't breathe properly. But how do you end life, So, I talked to my family about that because we're all at that time where anyone can go. And I say to them, they said, well, do you have a place to be buried and all that? And I say, no, I'm going to be cremated. Well, that's against my religion, Greek Orthodox, they don't cremate. I said, I don't care. They're man's laws, not God's laws. I mean, that's their religion. I mean, and then you're supposed to abide by that because if you don't, something terrible will happen to you. Well, who cares? In the end, it's in the way you go. So as I'm going towards that time in my life, I'm still creating. So I realize longevity has to do with your curiosity and how you still think of your life as being, still resonates with what's going on. So I think I'm going to be around for a while. And, I've always been a big influencer on those who are coming who have coming before me. But those who influenced me, who have all gone now. And I think about everything we did together. And it goes so quickly after a while. And so I saw it from my niece, and I saw it from the kids and all that, and how you influence people. So I'd like to think there's still enough there that, just like the fans, who want to have Tony and Andre back, that we still have something to do. It's not over. And because I've been doing days for so many years, in between other things, the writing was great because it made me a better actor, because it gave gravitas to language. And so now that I'm doing another project after the podcast, I've just finished writing, and I'm not quite sure where I'm going to put it, but I did this, what I find is a wonderful biblical story.
Nice.
And I'm not sure if that's going to be a podcast because I did a lot of research. I also went to Egypt, explored that whole story about the Holy Family. I've been to sacred places. I mean, all of this that I've done, and suddenly I went, there's something here. So I've created this incredible library in my mind, and I am searching in there for what's next and where to place it. And I trust in the way I live, I'll be shown the way.
Absolutely. One of my favorite actresses of all time is Doris Roberts. And you mentioned her, such a good friend of yours. And, as a kid, I was first introduced to her in Chevy Chase's Christmas Vacation. And as an adult, she was spectacular as Marie Barone on the hit comedy television series Everybody Loves Raymond, which the reruns of that are all over the place today. You all were very close friends. After one of your real life dinner parties that you had in many of the Hollywood Hills homes, Doris sent you a note that said, quote, "This table is so beautiful that you just sit down, that you don't want to sit down, you don't want to mess it up," unquote. Ironically, and not probably coincidentally, she was always portrayed as this incredible cook, on Everybody Loves Raymond. That was what she was. She was this incredible cook. Tell us about your friendship and the effect she had on your life.
I remember I'd met her in class at Milton Katselis' master class in Beverly Hills. I started that workshop with him. And for 25 years, we studied together, the same class. And I remember every time I come into class, I would always go over to her, and she'd be sitting in her chair, and I'd go down on one knee, and I would kiss her on both cheeks, and she would hold my hand very close to hers and tell me something beautiful. And if I was going to do a scene, she'd get very excited. She was a great supporter. And So Milton used to always turn around and say, I have my barometers here today. That was Doris in one corner, me in another, and John Glover in another. And in the far back was Jeffrey Tambor. So we really had a good combination of actors. And she would always say to me, darling, when are we having dinner? So I would invite her basically almost every week. And she would sit at the head of the table and she would just love it. Everybody else would go outside on the deck and all that. She loved sitting because she enjoyed my artwork, because she always thought it was like a museum because of what I've collected through the years. But my God, she loved her champagne. She loved anything I put on the table. I mean, her idea of cooking was reheating kookaroo from the day before. When she said, you want to come over for dinner? And I'd look at the table, I'm going, oh my God, has that bird died a few times? But there was an intelligence, and she would always say to me, I know you're going to do well. I just feel it about you. And she even announced it at the table, which I think some of the actors at the table did not appreciate it. She said, of all of us, he's going to do best than all of us. You watch him. You watch how he goes. So when the cookbook came, I said, could you do the intro for me? And she said, what do you want me to say? You write it for me, she said. I said, well, that's not going to be honest. What am I going to, tell myself what I'm a great cook or something? No, you do it. Just take the time, Doris. I took the time to cook for you for years. She goes, oh, okay. Well, she did a whole page, and I thought it was wonderful what she wrote. And I remember she was in her 80s when she met a man in his 70s who was totally enamored by her. And how they went out for a wonderful dinner in a limousine, and how she felt so insecure. And it all broke up one day. And I remember sitting across from her, and I said, she was telling, she was really not appreciating the way she was treated and all this. I said, Doris, it's not about him. And she said, what? I said, it's not about him. It's about you. It's about your choices. You chose a man that would make you feel a certain way at first, and then you realize you weren't good enough. So, I realized at that point, I said, it's really about you accepting your inner beauty and that which you have to give. And so you choose somebody who's going to make you feel that you're not worthy when you are. So better to have yourself being worthy than having a partner who makes you feel otherwise. And she got up from the table. Nobody talked to Doris. They're always afraid because she could be a killer. She got up from the table on the other side and came around and kissed me right on the mouth. Huh. So that was friendship.
Absolutely. It's funny to find out that she wasn't a good cook. When she was on that show, obviously that was one of the main things about it.
I know, but she had funny stories. She was just amazing. I hope that people realize what they have with them, the friendships they have, those that have been there for a long time, and how we nurture each other, and not wait until they die and then you miss them.
Yeah.
It's very important that
Absolutely.
we support each other and love each other and be around people who do that for you. Listen, the great thing about getting older is the wisdom that comes along with it, and the choices that you're able to make, and know when something is not for you, and kill it early on rather than waiting long enough to be hurt by it.
Definitely.
But now, I've, having been off the show and everything for a while, and having done other things and things that I'm doing now, I'm thinking I wouldn't have been able to do that. There's a reason. To me, it was a godsend that I was off for this amount of time, because I've created some things now that are exciting for me. And so, I spoke to Leanne the other day, and I said, how do you feel about going back if they asked us? Because I'm kind of sorry. Now that he's gone, I'm sorry that what he did to the show. Joe and I, Muscola, for 40 years built up the DiMera empire, which was such a strong element of the show in contrast to the others. We brought the intrigue, the romance, the danger, and all that, and he killed it. He said to me, I was too deep. I'm going to say about it now, and I think it's the best thing that's happened. I think it's great that they got female writers. Female writers to me in daytime have been fantastic. And Pat Falcon Smith, I mean, look at the story she created. And so I think it took a long time, but I'm kind of glad. I'm sorry, but we spent many years creating those things and dressing up for the characters and giving validation to why those characters survived for so many years. Why do they still resonate? Because we had an investment in it as well. It's not just the show. It's not just the writer. It's the actors as well. The actors put energies in and create and bring their personalities through and work very hard to do it. Just like the wardrobe person puts you together. So it's a whole package. So when I see what happened, I just went, vignettes and nothing with longevity. So I just hope, whether I go back or not, I hope because this show has been in existence going on to 60 years. It's had some wonderful, wonderful stories.
Right.
And I hope Ken, because he's the captain of the ship. So I'm hoping that this decision is made, which I feel is the right one to make, going into our 60th year.
I remember, like I said, watching it as a kid in the 80s and 90s, that, I would be disappointed if there was a day that the show was on that the DiMeras weren't on it that day. You know how sometimes there were days that different characters weren't on. It was like, it's not going to be as good today. Because, I mean, that's, one of the main reasons why I watched it was to see, what the storyline, but you and Stefano and what was going to happen and the excitement around it, the intrigue.
Well, thank God for those fans who put the clippings on of shows from the past that I forgot I even did those shows. But it reminded us on how good the writing. It's easier to learn when the writing's good. But it was just the golden age that we were part of daytime. And I still think we can still do it, because those actors and everybody on that show, and I know from other shows as well, they work hard. 3 times as hard as other shows, films, and television at night, because what it takes to know that kind of dialogue and be at the edge every day because you're not quite sure if you want to go beyond it. So I think, Joe and I had some wonderful, which I'm very proud of, the material and the relationship that came out of that. And also the other characters that were part of the family. And also our obstacles in life and how we I mean, just things that we're able to do, all the different alleys, hideaways that we had, secret doors in the DiMera mansion. All those things were just really terrific. And of course, making your entrances. That was always a lot of fun. How do you enter this day? What are you wearing this time? What is the first thing coming out of your mouth? Maybe it's just silence, but who knows? But you better know that those shoes you're wearing are going to make you catch the eye of the audience and saying, look at that strut.
Right.
It's like the woman who comes in, the actress who plays your wife, and how she's dressed, and the girl's going to go, oh my God, look at that outfit. It was all those things because it was a daily situation. So I look back at it fondly. It was a big part of my life, and it gave me some extraordinary experiences and took so many journeys because of it. And so I'm grateful to Ken, and I'm glad the show's still going and still has legs.
And you made some wonderful friendships over the years.
Yeah. I mean, especially with Leanne and Lauren Coslow. Yeah. And also Christian Alfonso, sometimes with Deidre. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. It's more the women than the men.
Right.
There's something that's what I love about women. It's this they always show you their heart. Well, some of them.
Right.
Yeah.
I have so much more I want to ask you about the book. And I definitely would love for you to come back on in a few months where you could do part 2, where we could get into it a little bit more, because I have so many things to talk to you about with different celebrities that you were able to cook for. So if you would be welcome to come back on sometime, I'd appreciate it.
Sure, I enjoy our conversation, and thank you for the invite. And by all means.
Thank you. Awesome. Well, anybody that wants to go get a great book, Seducing Celebrities One Meal at a Time, you can buy it on Amazon. I'm sure you could probably get it in any of your local bookstores, like Thaao mentioned, Barnes and Noble, I'm sure has it. But it is a wonderful book. So many different people that he had encounters with, and we'll definitely talk more about that next time you come on the show.
Yes, you can get it on Amazon, and the hardcover. The difference is the hardcover has the recipes and everything are in color, so it's worth the investment to get the hardcover book, because that's how it came out originally.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean, you see all the wonderful colors of the food and the photographs.
Awesome.
Makes a difference, I think. But listen, it was a lovely thank you for the invitation. And
thank you. And I'll talk to you very soon, Thaao. Thank you so much for coming on again.
Thank you.
You take care. You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.